Got a product here that'll really transform the look of your bike. These are frame and engine guards. So basically what these do is they go right onto your frame and engine covers and protects the coatings. Like this frame has brand new powder coat and it has Cerakote on the engine cover here. And what these are going to do is protect that coating from wearing. And also this is a textured, really adhesive vinyl, and that'll add some grip to the bike as well. And also, if you have really worn looking covers or a worn paint on your frame, these work good for covering that up too. So these will stick to steel, aluminum, plastic, powder coated surfaces, Cerakoted surfaces. If you have crappy spray paint on your covers or frame, I probably wouldn't put these over that because spray paint typically doesn't stick very well, and that won't allow these to stay on as good as they could. Now to put these on, we need access to the entire cover as well as the frame. So I'm going to loosen up the brake pedal here, pivot that out of the way. Now a couple things to keep in mind here. If you are putting these onto a bare metal surface such as an aluminum frame or aluminum cover, I would recommend scuffing the cover first with something like this. It's like a hand pad. Just scuff it up. That'll give it a little better profile for these to stick to. Now for coated surfaces, you don't really need to do anything besides just your typical cleaning. We're going to be using isopropyl alcohol here and just a clean cotton towel. And of course the prep work is always the most important. Wipe it down a couple times. If your covers are really nasty, you may want to use like a degreaser beforehand. If you do a good job with prep, then you should have no issues with these things staying in place. And if you're installing these guards in a cold climate, such as like below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, I would recommend heating up the guard and the cover beforehand. So you'll notice there's two wings on this guard here, and a lot of these guards have these built in. That way they wrap around the cover. And what this does is it protects this edge, which typically gets a ton of wear. If you think about it, when you're riding the bike, your boot is going like this to go for the brake pedal. So it's constantly rubbing against that surface. So we're going to eye it up. We want this level, of course. Peel back the backing. And actually what I'm going to do is rip off a little chunk here. I'm going to put that right there so that way my skin is not touching the adhesive directly. And I'm going to line this guard up at the most technical part. So that would be right here. It's got to go around this mounting bolt and then line up with the edge of the cover here. We're just going to use light pressure for now in case we need to realign it. Looks like that's lining up pretty good. So optimally you want the guard to go to the edge and not over in most cases. If it goes over just a little bit, that could possibly lead to some peeling. And so you want to be just away from the edge there. So you can see I'm pretty far off right here, so I need to peel it up and move it over a bit. On these round covers, sometimes it's really hard to kind of see where you're putting it. Move it over about 1/4 inch. That looks a lot better. Just make sure the gap is even on both sides if you want it to look perfect. That looks pretty level. The top to the bottom. All right, that's better. So once you're happy with the alignment, start at the center, work out. So you want to get the flat surface stuck down first, and then work your way to the edges. We're going to save this part for last, since it is probably the most difficult. And this is where we're really going to need the heat gun. Just start tacking it over the edge there until it becomes a little too stiff. Just a little bit of heat, and then work a section, a little bit more. And you'll be surprised how well this material conforms. And for this top ear, I'm gonna work it down toward this one, so that way there's as less of a gap here with the relief cut. And this is where it gets kind of tricky. This one's shaping up pretty well. Now this is going to be the most important step out of the whole process, is giving it some heat and really bedding that adhesive down into the guard or into the cover. So you want to apply some good pressure there after you've applied heat. Just work one section at a time. You can also use a rubber roller or a wood roller. Same thing, just apply some heat. Works really good on covers that have a larger surface area like this one. Yeah, it's really, really important to get some heat into the material and let that adhesive just bond to the cover. That'll give you the most life out of these guards. All right, there we have it. That went on pretty nicely actually. No creases, no bubbles, everything lines up. Things you want to look for is any material hanging off the edges. All this looks good. Wrapped around this high wear area, pretty good as well. Now, a couple things to make your guards last as long as possible. First thing, if you have boots with steel caps on the toes, that will actually kind of wear into the guards faster. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then also when you're pressure washing your bike, you want to stay away from the edges, just like on graphics, on your plastics. Same idea. After you've installed the guard, you want to wait a day before you ride the bike. And then after that day, you want to check the guard again, check all the edges, make sure nothing's lifting up in case you had maybe a little bit of moisture or dirt in there. If it is lifting up, grab a heat gun, heat it up, tack it back down into place. And then after you've ridden, if you notice any edges peeling up and there's dirt behind it, you can actually take a knife and trim that off just so that way it doesn't peel the whole guard. Sometimes you'll notice, like if you catch a rock or something, it'll just barely peel up the edge. Like I said, take a knife, trim that little piece off, and tack it back down. A couple more things to note: you do not want to use any type of soapy water, Windex, or any installation liquid behind these guards. They are meant to be installed dry. And you want to be really careful with the heat gun as well. If you apply too much heat, you could actually start to melt the material and it'll start to deform it too. Now we're going to move on to the frame. This is going to be actually quite a bit easier than the engine cover was. So same process, just clean it up with isopropyl alcohol. And this one's actually a lot more detailed, so I can show you the best place to line it up at, which is going to be right here. Just lightly tack that down, line it up here. And once you do a few of these guards, it actually goes really quick on install. You can put these on in less than 2 minutes. And if you don't like how something is lining up, say if you want to pivot it this way or that way, you can just apply a little bit of heat here and the guard will actually stretch one way or another. But for the most part, these guards will line up pretty much perfect. We spent a lot of time getting the templates dialed on them. And then when you get down to something like this, you want to work your way down and to the bottom before applying it all the way. Well, let's make sure you don't have any big bubbles in there. And then just go at it with a heat gun. And if you're going over a weld, you really want to tack it in tight to that weld. Push it in, give it some pressure. There we have it. That one turned out super clean as well. This really adds just a meaty look to a bike. Really transforms the look of it. So overall, it's pretty simple to install these guards. If you've ever done graphics, it's pretty much the same thing. In fact, it's probably easier. This material actually has an air release, so that way there's no bubbles that are going to form underneath. So basically, just clean up your covers really well, clean up your frame really well with isopropyl alcohol. If they're bare aluminum, scuff them first, and then give them a little heat. Stick them on, line them up, work from the center out, work your little edge guard here, and then apply a ton of heat just to get it bedded in to the material here. And that's pretty much it. Wait a day, check it, and then you're all good to go. Now the engine covers and frame on the RM we were working on earlier were super simple, nice and flat. Now I wanted to show what an install would look like on a more detailed cover, something that has more crevices and lines here. So I'm going to pull this guard off the 125. This guard has actually been on here for probably 10 hours of ride time. And you can see here, there's not even anywhere whatsoever, not even on the edge here. It's holding up remarkably well. And I'll kind of show you what it looks like pulling these off. As you're pulling it off, you might notice some glue. That is pretty normal, especially on aluminum covers. As you can see, these guards are on here pretty good. And then if you want to get that glue off, just take the guard and kind of tack it on there and it'll pull more of that glue off. So this old guard was actually a test piece. You'll notice the finished piece has a little more material here to wrap around, and also we did a little different design with the font too. So I'm gonna have to pull off the front sprocket guard so that way I can wrap the guard around the edge. Like I mentioned earlier, on bare aluminum covers, you want to give it a little scuff. I cannot stress this enough. You must have the covers or your frame perfectly clean to get the most out of these guards. And I would recommend trying to find 99% isopropyl alcohol. You can usually find this at most drugstores, your Walmart, Walgreens, Rite Aid kind of deal. Now on some covers, you'll notice that there's some raised text here, and so that these guards have a cutout for that. That way it can kind of pop through, and that cutout is actually where we're going to line it up at. Just want to get it centered on there. Also, another thing to note, if you need to peel up your guard to reposition it, make sure you have some heat in the guard. Say if you're working in a cold garage during winter and you try to peel it up, it'll actually damage the guard. So add some heat with a heat gun, or if you're outside and it's warm like it is today, it's like 70 in here, you're perfectly fine just peeling it up and repositioning like that. Work down the flat surfaces first. Work from the center out. And on a guard like this where there's so many crevices and lines and angles everywhere, it may be a good idea to take a picture of the guard beforehand or the cover beforehand. That way you can kind of see where everything goes. So I'm going to start up here. I'm going to work it down into the bottom first. You can use your finger, or you could use a plastic tool to help get it in there. I'll work my way to the next stretch here. Something like this, little plastic edge or even a credit card is pretty handy for covers like this. And you always want to be working towards an opening like this. so the air can come out the bottom there. Gonna come over to this side now. You can see how flexible this stuff gets when it's heated up. So we've got the bulk of the cover done. We just need to do this lip here. It's pretty simple. Just heat it up and work it over. That'll just give the guard a little extra protection against catching on your boot and peeling up. So these covers that are more technical definitely require some more patience, and if you have something like this, it makes the job a little easier. But like I said, just take a picture of it beforehand. That way you kind of know where all these lines are and you can kind of follow that. But pretty confident you guys will be able to figure that out pretty easily. Just take some patience. So we're gonna give this thing a final heat up and it'll be all good to go. While we have this old guard here, I want to show you guys what it looks like if you overheat the guard. Once you see it start to get glossy, it'll melt it and it gets really stretchy at that point. Yeah, see it got pretty glossy there. Ooh, yeah, it takes a lot of heat to actually melt this. So if you guys might be curious about the feel or the grip of these, think of it as like a really tough leather. It's almost like a bed liner type feel. It's not quite rubber. It's kind of in between. It's got some grip there, but it's not like full on rubber. And it's definitely not sandpaper where it's gonna like sand your boots and destroy them. So it's a really good blend of grip and durability. So think of like almost like a vinyl bed liner. That's the best way I could describe this material here. Now you guys might be wondering how durable these guards are. So this frame guard has been on here for about 10 hours worth of ride time. So about 5 or 6 rides, I would say. And you can see it's starting to wear on this edge. It's not bad at all. Not peeling anywhere, just the material's wearing, which you could probably get another, 4 or 5 rides out of this piece before it, it starts to really wear thin. But keep in mind, this is on a 125, so I'm shifting like 20 times a lap, down, up. So there's a lot of movement here. And this is the worst of any of the wear. As you saw, the ignition cover was in perfect shape. And let's go to the other side of the bike and I'll show you what that looks like. And looking at this side, there's basically no wear on the frame. Maybe a tiny bit right here. You can see it starting to barely get smooth there. Clutch cover looks perfect as well. Maybe just a teeny bit there. Keep in mind, I am using boots without a steel cap, and I did the absolute best job I could on installing these, making sure they're on a clean surface, using plenty of heat to tack them in, and making sure there's no edges that are hanging off anywhere. Now, if you're on the website and you're looking at these guards and you don't see your model available, make sure you check back in a couple weeks. We're constantly adding new models and years. We're getting the templates for new bikes all the time. So keep that in mind. And then also, if you have any questions while you're installing your guards, make sure you watch the entire video again. Everything you need to know is right here. But if you're still having an issue, don't be afraid to reach out to us. All right, thanks for watching and enjoy your guards.